Good morning on this bright sunny day in Toronto. This is my opportunity to share with you some tips on how to secure a good rental apartment in Toronto. So I may have to do more than one episode because I do want to get a little bit into the detail about what landlords look for and what you should have in terms of being able to compete, which is what it is, against other tenants. So to begin with, I'm assuming here that you already know where you want to live and the type of apartment that you're looking for. And I'm going to have a separate episode talking about those two items. So let's assume that you found the place, you know the area, and you want to apply. So the first thing is there's a lot of competition out in Toronto. Be aware of this. The best units come with a price tag. Sometimes you can get a discount as much as 20-25% off or more off the market rate. And the reason being is the landlords sometimes would prefer to have what they define as a quality. Now, quality to different landlords means different things, but they're looking basically for individuals that they desire to be in those units. Now, what do they look for? There's two main things they look for and some auxiliary things. The first thing is they want a tenant who's going to pay rent. So very important, a tenant who's going to pay rent and pay rent on time without having to be harassed for it or having to be contacted for it constantly, because that's a pain in the neck. It's a headache for the landlords. Number two, they want tenants who will take care of the apartment. They want tenants who will sweep it, keep it clear, keep it clean, treat it as their home, as though they owned it. And this is a biggie because there's a lot of tenants out there that are under the impression that because they're renting, they don't have to, keep the place clean and tidy and walls clean and the clutter out of the way. And landlords don't want that. They actually want you to treat it like a home because it is something that is an asset. And B, after you're finished with it, somebody else is going to have to use it. And the more work they have to do on it, or the more problems that there is with things like bylaws and fire codes and safety, the more costly and problematic it's for the landlord, and the more likely they're going to want you out of there. So the way that landlords avoid this is they screen. They screen for good tenants. Third item. That's also important is how you get along, how you follow the local rules and laws, and how you get along with neighbors. So if you are the type of person who likes to stay up late playing loud music, for example, or have a lot of people over constantly, or have visitors from out of town, and they're continuously staying there, you're leaving your lights on all the time, you're just extra wear and tear, but you're also causing problems with the neighbors to the point where they may even call the police to complain, or they're calling the landlord if they have that kind of relationship. That's another thing that landlords look for. So they basically look for a person who has financial ability to pay, who is responsible in terms of caring for the place, and also who's of good character, that they're going to get along with the neighbors. All right, so those are three things. How do you prepare yourself so that you're able to meet those requirements? What do you need to get that across if you're that individual? How do you persuade the landlord or the realtor, depending who's doing the screen, that you are the best possible candidate for that apartment? Now, let me use, for example, an apartment unit that I have up at the beaches. And this also applies to one that I had at Yorkville recently. And I'll talk about that too. Slightly different experience. The fundamentals are the same. So here are units that are well priced. They're below market, and they're good quality units. The one in the beach is not what I would call ultra modern. If it were to be renovated today, it could go for $2,500, $2,800. This unit, in the first week, had 19 individuals calling about the unit. In the first day of showing, 9 individuals actually came out to see it. Out of those, about half are very, very interested, and actually it's more than half, and a couple of them actually are what I consider worth presenting. Now, when you're in a situation like that, how do you compete against people that may have a lot of the same qualities you do that a landlord may be looking for? So first of all, the first to the gates sometimes makes a difference. If it's a quick rental, they want somebody in there by the end of the month, for example, because the tenant suddenly had to leave, then the first one through the gate might have, will have an advantage. So get your application in immediately, which means that if you have that application completed and you see a place, you can actually hand it to them in hand, or you can email it to them if you have it electronically. It makes a big difference. Shows them that you're organized, that you've been thinking about it. You're not just moving around. Landlords like people that are organized. The more organized you are, the better it is for everybody. So that's the first thing. Have your application form ready. There's a standard application form that you can get online that's used by the industry. If you don't have one, email me. I'll be happy to get you one, and it could be a fillable one, so you can do it online even. You can email me at my connection through my profile, or in the description of this video. The other thing that you could have is your credit bureau. The second thing is the credit bureau. So the first one is have the application ready. Second one is have your credit bureau ready. The credit bureau should include the credit report and the credit score. If you do it yourself, you can usually get it done for free, or if you do it online, you get it done immediately, and you pay something like $20. It's not a lot of money. But the point is, you now have a credit report. You can submit that along with your application if you have a good credit score, or you can hold on to it and be ready to send it once the landlord asks for the additional documentation. If you have it right away, make it easy for them to make a decision, then you're locking out the competition. If you meet their requirements and they don't think they can get a better person that quickly, then you're halfway there. The third item is a letter of employment. It's very important that they know that you're employed, that you've been there for a while, and generally how much type of money, what kind of money you're making, so they know that there's stability and the reliability and their expectation of rent. As part of number one, your application, there's reference checks in there. I call the reference checks. So put down some reference checks that will speak the truth about you, because if it's a realtor that's calling, they probably have some experience with following through with credit, with reference checks. I've been in situations where in one, and it was unbelievable, in one house rental, half the people were using friends as a reference check that were lying for them. And when I delved into the discussions, it was clear, and they themselves, in one case, admitted and apologized, and that was it. And that person didn't get the house. They were crossed off the list. They weren't truthful. Other people had lied about where they lived, how long they lived there. So as a general rule, if you're caught lying on an application, the assumption is that there's more than one lie and that you're hiding something. So do not lie. Give them your story. Explain what it is that's going on. The reference checks will back up your story. That's what it's there for. It's not there to see that you're perfect. It's there to make sure that the information you have on there is accurate. So if you're saying that you have, I think in some cases they may ask you, do you have pets? So be truthful. Tell them you have a pet, or you're thinking about getting a pet, because if that's what your intentions are, then it's only proper and right that they know. Otherwise, you're going to have problems later on. Lying on an application form is, it's pretty good grounds for disputing the agreement. So you don't want that. You don't want any situation that's going to take away from any of your rights, or your ability to get what you want. So number four, that you want. So number one is your application. Number two is the credit bureau. Number three is the employment letter, and number four is what's called an NOA. So Canada Revenue Agency issues a notice of assessment after you file your income tax. They check your numbers, and they check back, say yes, this is we're in agreement, and it's a little summary that basically tells whoever wants one, and it's used quite a lot for mortgage applications, bank accounts, etc. It tells who's ever looking at it how much money you're making for that particular year. So if you have the last 2 years notice of assessments, it's going to complete your application. These 4 documents should give enough information and comfort level to a sophisticated landlord or a realtor to do a complete due diligence. The only thing that's missing from that is a criminal check, a criminal record check. And some individuals will provide that, but it's not something that's usually asked unless it's specific or special circumstances in terms of the living situation. So those 4 documents, have them ready. It will help you if you're going to apply. The sooner you give it to them, the better your story, the more likely you are to get it, and get it at a better price. Now, let's talk about what's happened in the past. There's some properties that have come up where the owners thought that they could get a certain amount for their rental unit. They may be transferred and they decide to put it up, and they're thinking back to when they were renting 2 or 3 years ago and what the rates were. Well, I have news for you. Rates have gone up a lot in Toronto in terms of rental cost. And it's only going to go up higher because of how much more difficult it is now to be able to rent a unit. There's a lot more work involved now, more paperwork in the last year with the changes that the government has implemented with the Fair Housing Act. There's just some changes made that makes it a little bit more complex for landlords to rent out their place. All this has contributed, and the costs associated with that, there's actual very real hard costs associated with that for landlords. Just make it have pushed up the rent because it gets passed on to the tenants. Bottom line is, if the landlords can't pay their mortgages, they have to find ways to increase their rent or do what they can in terms of being able to cover those expenses. So any new units coming on the market are much higher than what they were 2 years ago, let's say, or a year ago. So if you find a situation like that, what happens sometimes is they may list a unit for, say, $2,500 or $2,000, but the market immediately will tell them that they're under market price, and the market will bring to them, if they're doing it properly, higher rents. Now, what I mean by that is, if you are prepared and you're looking, you know what you're looking for, and you see a unit that's selling for $2,000, and the rent in that neighborhood is $2,500, what do you think is going to happen with the other 10 people that are in your exact shoes looking for that apartment, realizing it's a gem? As soon as they realize that there's other people interested in it, which they will assume to begin with, especially if you're saying to them, we're going to look them over in a week because you want enough time to market it to enough people, they're going to come in and they're going to actually say, oh, we're going to give you more. We'll offer you $2,300. I've seen situations of that happening where tenants, applicants, will go in and offer more money. Not because they're bad tenants, but because they realize that that's exactly what they want, and they want to lock up the competition. And it's their prerogative. If they want to offer more, it's their prerogative to do so. And I've seen that happening on some of the new to market units. So bear that in mind when you're shopping, and it could be a tactic that if you know the value of what you're looking for in that neighborhood and the value to you, then you might be more compelled to offer more for that. If it's priced above what you're looking for, the other thing you could try doing is negotiating down. So we're going to talk about how to negotiate your rent down in a different episode, in terms, not down, but a lower rent than what's advertised in a different episode, because there's a lot to it, and I want to make sure I cover enough of it. So anyway, in conclusion, to review one last time, um, the application, the rental application, your notice of assessment from the CRA, 2 years, your letter of employment, and your credit bureau. Those 4 things. I know I reversed the order, but those are the 4 things that you want. And if there's a story behind it, for example, if you've gone through a divorce and it's affected your credit bureau, talk about it, explain it to them. A lot of landlords, especially in Toronto, will understand, because divorce and separation is 40–50%, and it gets very costly and damaging to both parties, especially if they bring the lawyers in. And people know that. If it's confrontational, if it's something that's not pleasant, then it could be quite damaging. So experienced realtors and landlords know this, and they give some slack sometimes. So share your story with them. You know, everybody goes through some difficult times. You're moving for a reason. Either you're getting promoted or something not so so pleasant, and share the story for them. If they're willing to work with you, and a lot of landlords are, then you'll be pleased to be able to deal with that. All right, so I hope that helped. I didn't cover some items in there. I didn't cover the whole smoking issue. I didn't cover much of the pets issue. I didn't cover some of the, like the criminal record issues. I didn't cover some of those other issues because I wanted to have a general discussion now. I will get into some of those in another episode, because I know there's a lot of you out there that are wondering how to deal with that. I will also talk about negotiation in another episode, because it's going to require its own time. All right, so if you have any questions or comments, leave it below. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. I'm at Baldo and the number 1, Baldo1. I'm on Facebook, Facebook/Home in Toronto. You can find me there. And baldominaldo.com. I actually have some posts there that you might find, and resources, links that you might find useful. All right, so until we chat again, have a great day.